war on drugs began on June 1971 when President Nixon declared the war on drugs. The war on drugs is a fight between government and those who use and abuse drugs. The war on drugs is a complete waste of time in many people's eyes because drugs are easy to make, you have access to drugs, and there's so many different varieties of them. So the government may have won the battles, but they have lost the war. How's that?
The war on drugs is not accomplishing much because it's turning into more of a debt than anything else. In total, the U.S. government spends 3 times as much money yearly on inmates than fighting this war will have the same result as the ban of alcohol in the 1920s. In 2010, the U.S. government spent $15 billion on the war on drugs. Colorado and Washington State have recently legalized marijuana and are projecting tax revenues of $134 million and $129 million. The annual savings on enforcement and incarceration costs from legalization of drugs would amount to roughly $41.3 billion yearly. At least $46.7 billion in tax revenue based on the rates comparable to those of tobacco and alcohol. $8.7 billion from marijuana, $32.6 billion from cocaine and heroin, and the remainder is from the other drugs. A poll on October 2nd, 2008 found that 3 in 4 Americans believed that the war on drugs was failing. 80% of Americans also said that they agree that marijuana is not a dangerous drug. There are currently about 2.3 million people behind bars as a result of the war on drugs. They're estimating that there are around 230 million legal drug users around the world. Even though the U.S. is one of the leaders in the war on drugs, they are still ranked the number one nation in the world for illegal drug use. In 2009, there were so many drug-related arrests that it was estimated someone was getting arrested for a drug-related offense every 19 seconds. Overall, the war on drugs is referred to as a waste of time and money.
Drug cartels are a sophisticated organization of at least 500,000 employees. They are militarized an organization that brutalize anyone who tries to get in their way of business. They are known for viciously terrorizing and torturing people, therefore they always had an intimidating reputation. The leader of the cartels is Chapo Guzman, a 60-year-old drug lord who escaped Mexican prison for trafficking cocaine and murder. There's about 6,700 legal gun retailers in America. In Mexico, there's 1. 90% of cocaine in America is brought by the Mexican drug cartels. 1,000 people have been killed by the cartels. They take about $19 to $29 billion a year from the U.S. drug sales. The drug cartels are quite competitive with other drug-related organizations and often get into fight over turf and lack of respect within one another. The drug cartels also partake in human smuggling, assassination, piracy, prostitution, and theft in oil and minerals. Now that Colorado has decriminalized marijuana, the cartels have started to move there and take advantage. Though, since people can buy marijuana in dispensaries now, they don't have to buy it illegally like that means usually from cartels. So, cartels have lost an estimated $1.4 billion. Due to this being a legal drug trade, the prices are not regulated, so it can cost up to double the amount from if you got it from illegal businesses.
I know that it's eating at our tax money, and it allows our government to arrest people with a small quantity of what shouldn't be considered an illegal substance, put them in jail for just as long as someone who's trafficking large amounts. So I think that's an issue.
Do you think the war on drugs is accomplishing anything and getting drugs off the street?
No, any fear-based propaganda won't accomplish anything.
I think if the government controlled the drugs that were on the street, there will be no more drug dealers or underage people using drugs. This would lessen the crimes by minors and students in our schools. People can also turn this issue and compare to the legalization to smoking and alcohol. Minors have found ways to buy beer and cigarettes, so why wouldn't they find ways to buy drugs that were legalized? With the government regulating the drug, they can control how much is sold and how much can be consumed by the buyer. In the United States, over the past 20 years alone, the prices of heroin, cocaine, and marijuana has decreased by 80%, according to British medical journey Open. Yet, since these drugs have got so cheap, the potencies also have skyrocketed.
Personally, I think there's been positives and negatives. The positives may be that there might be less drugs out on the streets, but I think there's been a lot of negative impacts regarding people who use, in this area, marijuana probably medicinally, and that they haven't dealt with the actual problem, which is people who want to take drugs as opposed to the sources of drugs. I guess what I've experienced, I've worked out in the bush a lot, and I've seen plantations, marijuana plantations, both old, like the remnants of those plantations, and new plantations, where there's actual plants. I have a friend who, when they were working, they found a large-scale plantation where there was thousands and thousands of plants, and the feeling of the police and everyone who worked in with it was that there was that it was probably related to gangs, that it was a gang enforced plantation where the marijuana was probably being sold down to the States and exchanged for cocaine. In addition, I think like with my profession and the war on drugs, is that there, like a lot of the marijuana, which is the main drug that is grown in this area, has been the technology to find it in the forests and the mountains has improved substantially, where they use actually I'm not sure what kind of they use.